I am Jean-Claude Verrouet. I am pleased to introduce this regional Argentine Malbec tasting guide by 5 of the top world's master sommelier and master of wine. Doug Frost, Rebecca Feynman, Case Golden, Brian Koziol, Evan Goldstein. Each of them will focus on one of the 5 different growing areas from southern region to the northern region, offering their knowledge. I have been working in Argentina for 8 years. I discovered a great diversity of terroir. Thank you for joining us and please enjoy the tasting.
Good afternoon. I'm Brian Koziol, Master Sommelier, and today we're going to talk about the renaissance that's happening in Argentina, and most specifically in Mendoza, where site-specific wines have really become not something that is being done by a few people, but definitely emerging across the entire region. So let's get started here to really talk about the journey. How did we get to site-specific wines here in Argentina? And when we think about the country just as a whole, we have a long, rich history of course, of grape cultivation happening in the country. It goes all the way back to the 16th century. I think what is unique here is, wines are being made in the 16th century, 17th, 18th century. In the 1850s, we get the influx that comes through in the course of a lot of immigrants, and as a result, they were challenged, and we get the first bringing over, in the course of Vitis vinifera grape varietals, European grape varietals coming in the course of Argentina and into Mendoza. Malbec was one of those grape varietals. And what's important to understand here, because this is some of the fundamentals that still play through the course of the viticultural practices that are happening in the course of the country, is these grapes that come over are Vitis vinifera pre-phylloxera Europe. And as a result, the grapes that are planted throughout the course of the country to get the course of these vineyards started are Vitis vinifera grapevines with natural Vitis vinifera rootstocks. And so today, because of the isolation that happens within the course of this country from the Andes and the Atlantic, you get this culture or this viticultural culture that has preserved these grapevines, so that you don't have phylloxera coming through. You don't have to graft over onto the course of the American rootstocks. So that the plantings that are throughout the course of the country are indigenous to the course of the whole of what started down the path back in the 1850s, which is something special up and down the course of the entire country. Then, as things start moving along, the immigrants that are there, they had a thirsting for the course of wine with the course of their daily life, and as a result, the country produced wine to quench that thirst of the locals. And most of the wine that's being produced through the course of the country at this time, back in the 1850s and into the early 20th century, here is bulk wine, what we are known as table wine. Things really take a shift here in the course of the late 1970s, early 1980s, where some social and some political crises are happening. As a result, the entire wine industry, which had worked itself into being basically the 5th, 6th largest producing wine country in the entire world, collapses. To get the industry going back on its feet, the country started to look for an economic way, and how could the wine industry help them economically? And they shifted gears towards the export market. Now, the people there were definitely, I'd say, true to the course of themselves. They knew their capabilities, and as a result, they knew that producing fine wine for the export market was definitely not a thing for them. So they branched out to the course of consultants. The fine winemakers were happening from the course of Europe into the course of Australia, New Zealand. Argentina then was one of these countries that embraced it as well. You have some great winemakers that worked their way into the course of Argentina. And what they discover is those indigenous Vitis vinifera vines. They see great plant material. They see this uniqueness of high elevation because of the Andes Mountains that really can influence the course of viticulture, which can lead us up to having great grapes. And they definitely said fine wine could be made. And so in the 1990s, a shifting happens from bulk wine to fine wine. And that sends this renaissance out. And then what happens over the course of fine wine around the tourist of the world is everyone thirsts for finding places where you can really accentuate site-specific wines. And what's happening then in the 1990s is not only is there this renaissance happening, but there's also a change in the guard. There's a lot of new generation that's coming through the course of the established wineries that made itself through the course of the crisis. There's an influx of, foreign currency and foreign expertise that's coming to the course of the region. And so as a result, you take a foundation of passionate people with curiosity because of this new generation and a culture of people. The Argentinian people don't rest on their laurels. They're definitely a proud culture. And so they push themselves into what else can we do? So they start to expand out and explore to find more sites to grow grapes. Mendoza, the center of the course of the winemaking culture in the course of Argentina, is really the hallmark for this renaissance and the hallmark for terroir site-specific driven wines. When we think about Mendoza, we got a few things going on. So just to lay the land here is, we have high elevation, we have vineyards that alluvial soils, we have a long growing season, we have intense sunlight, we have something called a diurnal shift, and that's important here because that shift allows this semi-arid dry climate where we're irrigating off the course of the snow melt from the course of the area. That diurnal shift really allows a nice growing season. That sunshine allows that Malbec to get a really hardy style skin so that it really can produce a really deep color. The polyphenols and the aromatic compounds that are there really become intensified because of this diurnal shift. And the other unique thing that we have here is we have the Zonda wind that comes down that really helps the area be really, with the humidity, it's basically pest free for the course of an appellation, which makes it be great for just general winemaking, but then for fine wine, without a doubt. Where is fine wine being grown? So if we look at Mendoza to the east, there's an appellation called Maipu, really good quality wines. I think that's what really started the people to enjoy Argentinian wines. It's red fruit, voluptuous, very, very velvety. I mean, it's a great bottle of wine. And then as you move yourself around, there's a place called Lujan de Cuyo. And then really where this site-specific sites are being accentuated is a place called Valle de Uco, where we're talking extreme growing conditions, high elevation, and this is where the country then starts to embrace this idea of a geographic indication, or a GI, site-specific wines. And now we start getting in Mendoza where there's roughly over 100 throughout the entire country of these GIs. There's at least over 30 GIs with single sites that started by political areas, but today they're really carved out because of soil, temperature, rainfall, sunlight, differences that are happening to make these site specifics. And one of the hallmark site specific places, one of the first was a place called La Consulta. And La Consulta sits in the Valle de Uco in a place called San Rafael, or San Carlos, my apology. So down in San Carlos. And this area of La Consulta is synonymous with, of course, a terrain that is alluvial soils. We're sitting at roughly about over 3,000 feet above sea level. So it has that great sun exposure. You have the Andes in the distance right there. In addition to that, there's the San Jose volcano. I think its last eruption was back in the 1960s. So that creates this unique extra microclimate area within the course of La Consulta. And to talk about these wines, I've brought in the course of being able to taste a wine produced by a winery called Altocedro. Now, Altocedro is made by one of these avant-garde winemakers who really emerged in the 1990s and early 2000s, named Karim Moussi. And Karim, he focuses his winemaking on La Consulta. His father was one of those bulk grape growers that was throughout the course of the 20th century there. And he really encouraged Karim to seek out La Consulta, as that's the place where his father believed fine quality wine was going to have its roots here in the course of Argentina. So let's taste the Altocedro Reserve Malbec 2017. It is definitely a hallmark styled wine for the course of La Consulta. And so this wine, when I look at the color to get started here, I take my thumb here. And with the course of my thumb, I'm going to really look at it. It's hard to really see through the course of my thumb. The wine's opaque, it's deep, it's purple, it's densely concentrated, which is a characteristic not only of Malbec just in general Mendoza, but definitely a hallmark character for the course of La Consulta. The viscosity here in the course of the wine, we got big legs, leaving myself thinking that I definitely have some alcohol happening here, high alcohol. There's concentration within those tears coming down from the extraction for the course of the skins, because the berries here are really, really thick skin with a little bit of juice that's right there, and some nice extraction that happens in the course of his winery here, where he has concrete tank fermenters, so he gets good extraction, cool fermentation that's happening here. Aromatic-wise, wow. The wine has, when I first really think it's ripe fruit. It's a powerful wine just on the nose with its aromatics. I'm thinking black cherry, black raspberry, blackberry characteristics, black fruit, versus lower in elevation, you're getting more red fruit that happens in the course of Mendoza. So black fruit dominated. And the fruit here, the condition is, it's kind of like has this nice little liqueur quality to it of character that's there. And then as it plays out on the course of on the aromatics here, get a little minerality, that alluvial souls kind of play through, but very faint, definitely a fruit-forward style wine. There's some oak here because this is Reserva. Country as a designation has some terminology. Reserva has to be at least 1 year in oak. Karim takes it a little bit further in the course of its aging. Grand Reserva is 2+ years in the course of vessel there. So that's that is standard for the course of the country. So something to look out when the course of read labels of the course of Argentinian wines. And then in addition to that, floralness, violets, purple flowers, really kind of lift the course out of the course of the glass. Probably little chocolatey notes, and we got that French oak there, that vanilla, nutmeg, baking spices that shine through. Let's taste. Doesn't disappoint. Powerful aromatics, powerful in the course of my palate as well. Lots of power, dry wine, full bodied. Those dark fruits shine through, the blackberry, the cassis, the black cherry, blackberry quality, black raspberry, a little bit of that minerality component there. Oak on this wine, French oak, vanilla, nutmeg, spices here. The tannin profile here, we've got high tannins. And that's the unique thing, is these tannins are very firm tannins. They're definitely well-structured tannins, which in the combination of this moderate plus acidity that's kind of shining through on the course of my palate is, this is going to give this wine some, definitely some ageability to it. And also opens the door in the course of food. It's a wine that is craving the course of the local asados, that social barbecue gathering where you got these amazing grills with hot coals and succulent meats, chorizo, and of course a little tiny little bit of vegetables that play out there. This wine craves for that characteristic of cuisine right there. As to really kind of round out the course of that tannin structure, that food here to tame it. In addition to that, here on the course of my palate, I get that chocolatey note, that mocha, dark chocolate quality to it. As I mentioned, moderate plus acidity. It's definitely it's a big wine with the course of the character. It fills my cavity here, so alcohol is moderate plus of that high. Really long finish. What's unique is on the nose, I had that liqueur quality, but on the palate, it's not that really ripeness of fruit, but it of the liqueur quality. But as I sat here talking, really the finish finishes with the nice little sweet black fruits kind of shining through for this wine. And so this wine, as I mentioned, goes great with an asado. Have this with the course of um, grilled meat at home. If you're a vegetarian, try a portobello mushroom that's been marinated with some balsamic and just grill that. This wine will definitely pair up with the meatiness of the course of that portobello mushroom. Would be nice pairing there. And in addition to that, I think that this wine can lend itself towards more fuller bodied style cheeses, hard cheeses. This is a 2017 vintage wines, good solid vintage. This is, as you move yourself into the Valle de Uco, as you move into the course of the vintages, 2017 rock solid, 16 probably a little bit more. Really watch your producers right there. 2018 going to be another good solid vintage, but wait for the course of the 2019s. They're supposed to be blockbuster, probably one of the best vintages of the entire decade. And with that, just to summarize, La Consulta, a great GI appellation within the Valle de Uco, sub-region of Mendoza. So